And black still has to be careful because after taking the bishop, white has another very nice way to sacrifice the rook, rook to g7, and after bishop takes, we get a checkmate, the king cannot escape to f8. Hey everyone, in a few hours from now, the 2024 Candidates Tournament will start. This is definitely the most exciting chess event in the year so far, and to get in the mood for this tournament, I want to analyze one of the nicest games that I've seen from a Candidates Tournament, and this was back in 1953 in Zurich, where the winner of the tournament and former world champion Vasily Smyslov played a very instructive game against Paul Keres. This game will teach us a lot of things like the risks of pushing for a win in equal positions, the importance of active defense and concrete play when defending, some nice checkmate patterns, and a very important defensive setup. So without further ado, let's get started with this very nice game. White started with the move c4, leading the game to an English opening, and after knight to f6, knight to c3, e6, black is inviting white to go for the queen's pawn game if white goes d4, but white still wants to play the English opening and goes knight to f3. Here black could definitely go d5, but instead black chose another option, c5, which is very common. And here white played the move e3. Fianchettoing the bishop is probably a bit more common in the English opening, but e3 is also very common in this position. And after bishop to e7, here white already played a move which shows that white is trying to avoid main opening lines. Here white went b3, d4 was more common in that position, and after black castled, white went bishop to b2. We already get a fairly original position. Black went b6 with the same idea to fianchetto the bishop, and now white went d4. Playing bishop to e2 was also perfectly playable. Instead white went d4, and here black captured on d4. Black already has to be a bit careful. Playing a natural move like bishop to b7 is possible, but here white might try to press for an advantage after the move d5, just trying to limit this bishop on b7. d6 is already a big threat, trapping the bishop on e7, so here white can try to claim a slight advantage. So that's why here black has to be a bit careful. d5 is an option, preventing white from playing d5, but taking on d4 is also a very interesting move, because white already has to make a decision. In this position I would probably take on d4 with the knight, taking into account that this bishop in b2 wants to be active on this diagonal. But instead white took on d4 with the pawn, which is an option, but as we see in the game, this bishop on b2 is not going to be very active. Black replied with the move d5, which is very interesting, and here white continued developing with the move bishop to d3. Just want to clarify in this position, if white takes on d5, it would probably make more sense to take with the knight, because black has the idea to go bishop to b7 and activate this bishop. And after bishop to d3, black developed with knight to c6, white castled, bishop to b7, rook to c1, rook to c8. So far the position is fairly balanced and quiet. Here white went rook to e1, taking on d5 was an option, the position is fairly balanced there. And after rook to e1, black even tried to create some complications, and he went knight to b4. So here white would probably like to play something like bishop to e1, keeping this bishop on this diagonal, eyeing the king side. But in this position white has a problem with the pawn on c4, so black can take on c4 and win a pawn. Taking the knight is a positional threat, so that's why white retreated with the bishop and went bishop to f1. And here black could have tried something like rook to e8, planning to bring a bishop to f8 for example. The position is still fairly balanced, but black probably tried to play for something more, and here he went knight to e4. White went a3, kicking away this knight. If the knight goes to c6, then white will simply win a pawn after taking the knight on e4. That's why black traded on c3, and this in a way forces to take with the rook, as it happened in the game, because after bishop takes, black has this very nice move knight to a2. Even though this knight looks trapped there, the idea is to take on c3 after the rook moves. Just take on c3 and then black will collect this pawn on a3. So after rook takes, black went knight to c6, and in this position actually white had an option to try to fight for an advantage by going c5, planning to go b4, expanding on the queen side. Now this bishop on b7 is also not very active, so this was an interesting try for white. Instead he went knight to e5, which is probably not a very strong move, because after knight takes and rook takes, black goes bishop to f6. This will improve the bishop, but white's follow-up was consistent, so after helping white improve the bishop, now white also wants to improve his pieces. He went rook to h5, just very direct, planning to create an attack on black's king. So here black went g6, attacking the rook, and here white played a very nice move, but in any case, if white didn't play this move, this rook would be misplaced there. So white's idea was to follow up with rook c to h3, just doubling rooks and planning to take on h7. On the other hand, this sacrifices a rook. Black played a very deep move here, he took on c4 with the pawn, but let's try to understand this position. So first of all, if black captures this rook, after queen takes, white has this battery with the queen and the rook, queen takes h7, checkmate is a huge threat, but here black might try rook to e8, the idea being that after queen takes, the king can try to escape, but here white had a very nice follow-up, which is the move a4. So this was quite a deep tactical sacrifice, because it was not just a checkmate in 1 or 2 moves, and now the idea is to go bishop to a3 and then take on h7, or if the king goes to f8, then after bishop to a3, the king cannot escape, and here black should try something like queen to e7, given material, because otherwise white will simply force a checkmate now that the king cannot escape. So here after queen takes and queen to h8, we get a checkmate. Now this position is still very wild, because black might have other defensive ideas like playing queen to d6, so here black is preventing bishop to a3 and not blocking the escape route for the king, but even here white has the initiative. Here the move queen to h6 is particularly strong, keeping the option of taking on h7 and also attacking the bishop that it is now undefended, and if the bishop moves, now white can take and then keep on attacking, so this position is still very good for white. For example, after bishop to f6, now there's even this nice idea of c5, attacking the queen and also planning to go bishop to a3. So this is actually very strong for white. For example, after pawn takes, queen to h6, king to e7, now white takes on c5, attacks the queen and the bishop. So this is just very bad for black. Now, I'm not sure how much Smyslov or Keres saw in this position, if they saw it till the end, because the lines can get very complicated, but Smyslov was a very intuitive player, so here he played a very strong move that is a lot more practical. So here he took on c4, and now the whole idea is that the bishop can join the defense. So if white takes on c4, either with the bishop or with the pawn, now black can take on h5, and after queen takes, the bishop comes to e4, covering h7, so this is just game over. So white has to keep on attacking, so he took on h7, and so far h8 is covered, so black can improve his position at least for one move. That's why he played the move c3, creating a very strong pass pawn and also attacking the bishop on b2. White is in no time to take the pawn, because after bishop takes, this rook is defended by the rook on h3, so black can take on c3, and after rook takes and king takes, black is winning a piece. Moving the bishop on b2 is just very sad and passive, but here Keres found another very nice idea to keep the game going and to create complications. He went queen to c1, creating this very nice trap if black captures the bishop. Here white has two very strong moves, one of them is queen to h6, white has this very strong battery, rook to h8 is coming. If white takes on d4, then we're gonna get very similar positions. Rook to g7 is also a huge threat, as we see later in the game. But even in this position, besides queen to h6, there's also a very nice tactic that is typical in these positions when we attack on the h-file, which is to go rook to h8, just sacrificing a rook, and after bishop takes, queen to h6, white has two threats in this position, either to go queen to h7 checkmate or to take on h8 with a checkmate, so black is unable to defend against these two threats. So these positions when you defend are very concrete, but black's move here is very strong. Queen takes e4. It is not about grabbing material, it is about overprotecting g7 and h8. Here white still tried queen to h6, and black still has to be careful, because after taking the bishop, white has another very nice way to sacrifice the rook by going rook to g7, and after bishop takes and queen to h8, we get a checkmate. The king cannot escape to f8. That's why black played rook f to d8, giving the f8 square for the king in these lines. So now the game is pretty much over with correct play. So it's important to know this setup when you defend. A bishop is very strong defending, covering g7 and h8. Here, since white has a battery with 3 pieces on the h-file, black needs the bishop and the queen to cover this diagonal. But now taking the bishop on b2 is a big threat. That's why white went bishop to c1, and after bishop to g7, queen to g5. White doesn't have any more threats. The game is pretty much over with correct play. Queen to f6, queen to g4. Since white doesn't have any threats, black created his own play by going c2, pushing the pass pawn, white went bishop to e2, black defended actively, rook to d4, attacking the queen, planning to double rooks on the d-file, and after f4, we get a lovely finish. Strong players, even when they have an advantage, they still go for concrete ideas if they work. Here Smyslov went rook to d1, forking the king and the bishop, and after bishop takes, queen to d4, we get another fork, black is giving a check, so here white resigned because after white goes bishop to e3 or white moves the king, black will simply take on d1 and get another queen. So hope that you enjoyed this very nice game where we saw very deep attacking and defensive ideas. If you want to seriously improve at chess, I have a free course that will provide you with a training plan for that. So feel free to check the link in the description if you want to know more about this. In any case, thanks a lot for watching and I'll see you in the next video.